Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today as we deep dive into the mythical world of NFTs and also get all your burning questions answered. Today, we not just have one, not two, but five expert speakers from the industry who we have gathered today to share their perspective and experiences with NFTs. Let me just give a quick introduction to our speakers. First, we have Jan Larsen, who is a veteran in the art scene, having been active since I was still crawling. He built Jan Larsen Art from the ground up to a global art practice from New York to Singapore. He now resides in Singapore, where he is also extremely active in the charitable scene. Next, we have Kevin Lim, who is the Deputy Director of Collab at National Gallery Singapore. He brings in new technology to be used to create a better and more immersive art experience. He also works hand in hand with startups on new creative innovations. Next, we have Shenzhen, who is a contemporary artist focused on bringing his perspective into the new media art with an abundance of work displayed at multiple museums, festivals, and installations. He's currently an educator and entrepreneur. Next, we have Sandra, who recently joined Zilliqa as the NFT and Metaverse futurist. She has been at the forefront of the digital change and has many experience in blockchain innovation. She believes that tokenization will give individuals not only financial independence, but also creative freedom. Last but not least, we have Hafiz Karim, or most of you may know him as the next most famous artist. He's most popular for reimagining classical paintings by putting their subjects into contemporary settings. His work has been featured on multiple national news sites and global magazines. Did you also know that today's visual is actually an NFT that Hafiz created? Interesting, right? But thank you all, five of you, for being with us here today. Now, we have really so much to cover and so many angles to approach the subject. Therefore, we're breaking this event down to three main themes, starting first with an overview of the technology. What is an NFT? What does it mean when somebody says non-fungible or fungible? And why so many artists and collectors are going crazy about this. Next, we'll give you an overview of what are some of the dangers that some people overlook when participating in NFTs. And lastly, we'll ask our speakers for the perspective and anticipation of what this technology could bring to the art and creative industry. Finally, we have a Q&A session and we'll try our best to answer all your questions. So feel free to input your questions anytime into the Q&A button. Now, without further ado, let us begin. So the first question in everyone's minds, especially for the newly initiated among us, is what is the difference between fungible and non-fungible? Well, fungible goods refer to items that are equivalent or consist of many identical characteristics, such that they're interchangeable and mutually substituted for another of the same kind. A good example is that a crumpled $100 bill from your pocket is worth the same as a brand new $100 bill fresh from the mint. And what is non-fungible? Non-fungible is a term that you can use to describe things that cannot be copied, substituted, or divided. Like a limited pair of sneakers, or maybe that rare Pokemon card that you collected many years ago. These things are not interchangeable for other items because they have unique properties. Like example, a painting like the Mona Lisa. There's only one. Even if you photocopy it, there's only one that's been painted by the hands of Leonardo da Vinci. There's nothing like it. So what is a non-fungible token? In essence, they are what we can use to represent ownership or unique item. They let us tokenize things like art, collectibles, even real estate. Now, there's only one official owner at a time, and they're secured by a blockchain. However, unlike cryptocurrencies, NFTs cannot be traded or exchanged at equivalency. They're instead used to just guarantee ownership of asset using unique identification code and metadata. Think of it as a certificate stating you're the legal owner or something, except in a digital form. Now, NFTs have really created a new class of collectibles. They have been around since 2017, but only this year have they really burst into mainstream after several NFT images and animation sold for insane amounts of money. Take, for example, the first ever tweet by Jack Dorsey that sold for $2.9 million. Now, famous sports moments have also been captured and traded, with LeBron James dunk selling for almost $400K. And of course, the most famous of them all is Beeple, selling NFT at a Christie auction for $69 million. Did you know that Beeple's highest paid physical art was only sold at $100? About NFT continues to boggle our minds. When you buy an art piece for millions of dollars, you at least own the physical art. But when you purchase an NFT, all you really get is just like a number on a blockchain. Anyone can go online, take a screenshot of perhaps Beeple's artwork, and basically have the same experience without paying millions of dollars. Now, with the stage set, we've come to the most exciting part of the event. Now, let us listen and learn from the movers and shakers of the industry, which is our speakers. Now, my fellow speakers, just feel free to chime in and share your thoughts or add to the thoughts of the other speakers. I'll just simply direct your question to one of you to kickstart the discussion. Let's begin the first question to Sungan. With NFTs being such a huge craze and so many artists and collectors entering the scene, how does NFT contribute to the overall art and collectible scene?
I think for starters, like if we look at how selling works has been done in the last, maybe say, we don't have to go too far back, in the last 20 years, artworks has always been sold as a physical object. No one really wants to buy a digital artwork as a file itself. Usually that's pretty much unheard of. Like digital artists, or I mean when the whole digital, even iPads, iPhones all came out, people starting to draw on iPads and stuff like that. Because when you want to buy an artwork, usually you have to print it out for the client, and then that will become a collectible. But as these tools starts to evolve, on one level we can see that artists are able to make works and directly sell it to clients now with this usage of an NFT. You sort of remove the whole printing, remove the physicality, you just sell the digital work itself. And I think on one hand, we want to talk about the originality, the one out of one edition of an artwork. This NFT would be the only way to do it. Well, on a higher level, I would think that with almost every movement in the arts in history, there's always been something that opens up new. NFT would be like conceptual art, would be like abstract expressionism, would be like every other movement in the past. It will open up something new for all the artists to work into, be doing something conceptual. I mean, so far we've been seeing a lot of artworks that's been sold, exchanged, created, mainly like 2D or imagery kind of stuff. So I'm wondering, like, what if the future we can have something like a Duchamp, Duchamp doing like a more conceptual work with NFT, and then pushing this medium to another level, or as a conversation for art. Yeah.
Can I add something to that? Like when it comes to like art trends in NFTs, right? Like CryptoPunks and all that, like generative art works has been quite popular in NFT. Like for like an artwork to actually be canonized or be seen as like something strong in art history, we need to actually unpack it and detach the value that it had, like the hype it had, but then take it away and look at the context of like art history a bit more, because I feel that the hype is actually ruining the art in a way, coming from like an artist. Like the essence of art is somehow lost when we keep talking about the monetary value of a certain work. So for a generative art, for example, CryptoPunks, like we tend to forget that generative art started out in like the 1950s, where it started, all 1960s, where it started off with the computer generating stuff, and it's all about randomness and human and relationship between human and computers. But we tend to forget about it and focus on the value, because when you purchase one NFT of a particular CryptoPunk, you're actually you're buying a token that represents the software or the hype that it represents, not the work. So that's it. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, is that something you also feel, Kevin?
Yes. It's interesting because now that we've heard from two artists, it's something that we've been observing as, no doubt, a combination of factors that lead to why NFT art has, in this sense, blossomed very, very recently. It is what I call the Wild West. We're in a very pioneering stage where new technology and traditional mediums start to clash and come together. And new possibilities emerge. And there are some of us who are very early adopters, some of us who are art-centric, or some of us who are pure investors. Some of these things collude together to become this very, very powerful force for why some people actually support this new approach as well. The answer, I mean, today, I don't think we can tell you like what's going to happen next, but what we can tell you now is that we are merely scratching the surface of the possibility of what NFT can provide. And I think through the course of today's discussion, you start to understand a bit more about it. But there's so many affordances of what NFT can bring to the table that excites both the artists and the culture sector and the museums, which I'm at as well. I'll just give you one example in that for the first time, right, whenever you talk about physical versus digital art or objects, one thing that makes a physical object so valuable as opposed to digital is the idea of the inability to easily replicate. So with digital being easily replicated, the value tends to drop, right? Anybody can have copies of it, so it's really no big deal. But this is where NFT starts to turn the table around, because by setting in rules in smart contracts, which are like little policies they can set within an NFT code, you can stipulate the amount of such instances of such a piece appearing in the digital domain. So in a sense, it's almost like a kind of control mechanism that's built into the code. And this smart contracts capability is what makes it very, very sexy, because actually you can stipulate so many rules, including how many versions of this artwork could be minted from it. So maybe you might want to even say that, okay, maximum we'll see 10 minted NFT from it. So you could limit the supply, and that's a big deal. It gets closer to the physicality of a digital work. And you can even look at recursive events whereby if I buy, let's say, Shengen's artwork as an NFT and I choose to resell it, maybe I want to pass it on to a friend and I want to purchase something else, I have that flexibility. And Shengen could have easily encoded the smart contract to include a royalty element, which gives the artist for the first time that capability to have passive income. That's a huge deal, because if enough of his works goes in the marketplace, he doesn't always have to rely on the first sale, but every subsequent sale becomes an exponential passive income for the artist to almost have the ability to live off his works, which is the holy grail, because so many artists have to take up second jobs to maintain their passion of art, and I think Han here can share more about it, right?
Me?
Yeah, I thought you'd be able to jump in and talk about it.
Yeah, what you're talking about is effectively setting up a system of royalties that delivers value to the artist over time. So the artist isn't just transacting on the initial purchase, but on every replication of the work. For me, what's really interesting about engaging my work with the blockchain is the opportunity to fractionalize and do what you're talking about with smart contracts, where a number of people can invest into art. But for NFTs, what I think is particularly interesting is that it creates a new first edition. There was an American artist named Saul LeWitt who would write what were essentially algorithms or descriptions of drawings to be done on various walls, and they're done in various museums. And so his foundation is essentially made up of a series of his formulas or algorithms. So in this respect, this is a digital version of the same thing, where you're buying the master copy. It's like if you were to buy the masters of the Beatles albums or any musical artist, buying the masters, then you have ownership of that property, but the artist also earns royalties on it over time. So that's what you're talking about, Kevin. That's what's really interesting for the artist community, and it's also really interesting for the investors because you have an asset that is performing over time, not just you're not just holding it, but it's engaged in the marketplace.
Yeah. On that note, I think. Sorry, Sandra.
No, I just wanted to kind of chime in for a second and just say that one thing that's really interesting about NFTs and people kind of always seem to jump in and kind of link it to art. If we were to kind of look at it in a broader kind of perspective, NFTs are actually, they can represent ownership of anything unique. So if we can broaden the spectrum a bit out of art, they can be attached to a lot of really beneficial features in many industries. But just to bring that back to the art scene, I just want to say that, you know, back previously, if we were to go before NFTs were introduced, we had this certain artist, right? So the digital artist who wasn't able to make an income the way that he had the creative freedom and ability to do so. So their artwork would have been attached to, you know, maybe advertising, to marketing aspects, but there wasn't kind of the digital artist where people could actually own their artwork and say, I'm now following this creator. And to me, I think that that really opens up the spectrum of the art world, because, you know, you have your fine arts, you have your photographers, and now you have your digital artists who are also able to full on push through with their career and just make a living out of it. And not only that, but also push boundaries on how they can connect with their fans. And to me, that really just blows my mind, because, you know, we now have this new level of an artist who is out there saying, hey, you know, you've kind of put me in the corner for a very long time, but here I am right now. And I think that's amazing, really.
Yes. So we talk a lot about, you know, how it benefits artists, but how about the investors? You know, many investors are paying for the art, collecting this art. Sandra, do you think NFT is a sustainable investment, or is it just, you know, maybe a fad?
No, I definitely wouldn't say NFTs are a fad, especially, you know, since I was talking about how it allows the creator to connect more with their fans. What is a fad, though, is just like with everything in the world, you know, you have sometimes where a certain kind of color would be in style. So, you know, you would have your kind of approaches that could be a fad. So, you know, a certain style that is out there, but NFTs definitely aren't a fad. Are they sustainable for the artist? 100%, because, you know, they can expand their career as much as they want. And within it also, as Kevin touched on, they can include royalties. And they can also include rights to access, which previously they couldn't do that. When it comes to the collectors, 100% is sustainable, because you're adding to their collection this new level that within the metaverse, and what Zilliqa we're looking at doing is bridging the gap between the physical and the digital. So in the future, the artist could give 2 copies, which is a physical copy you could put in your house, but at the same time, you can have the digital NFT of it housed, you know, or staked on a platform where you can say, all right, I own both of these. But of course, in saying that, you know, this is a marketplace, you know, volatility plays a big part, because there aren't many mechanisms in place to price assets properly. So, you know, that does sometimes come into play from a collector's point of view. There's also the liquidity. So, you know, can you exchange this artwork for cash? Are you able to do that? So this really just ties in more into the regulations and the rules moving forwards. But other than that, I definitely feel that artists now are building a new set of collector, which is the collector who is interested in showcasing their digital artwork. And I do just want to focus on the metaverse as well, which, as many big players in the field have mentioned now, that the vision is to build a metaverse for everyone to join in. So your artwork won't only represent what you have inside your home anymore. It will be in your digital space too. And that's, to me, I think that's beautiful, to be honest. So yes, it's not a fad, and definitely invest in NFTs.
I completely agree with you. So based on what you shared, I think everyone should really own an NFT, whether big or small. You should just own one, because it's a piece you own forever, and you're also contributing and giving back to.
I mean, of course, you need to do your own research. Make sure that the artist, you know, has a following. It is their work. With everything that is being said today, it does come down to doing your own research. At the end of the day, I mean, I could sit here and say, yes, sure, go buy NFTs, but at the end, it comes up to you who you want to invest in, because at the end of the day, who you're investing in, you will grow their career and you will push them to produce more artwork. So make the right choice when it comes to it. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, Jan, you being a veteran in the art industry, you know, having traveled the world and set up traditional galleries, what made you consider NFTs?
Thanks, Alex. As I just described, what interested me about NFTs is the opportunity for collectors to own the original of the original, master copy So it effectively creates an opportunity for a new first edition of a digital work. So for me, that's what's interesting, as well as engaging in the blockchain and fractionalizing work and enabling a group of people to purchase one work. One of the challenges in selling and collecting art is space to keep it and showcase it, and also the expense is not unsubstantial. So sometimes folks like to pitch in together, and this gives them a way to invest in art as a group. So it makes it social as well. But for NFTs, this is a way to create a new first edition, basically a master copy. So one of the challenges is you only have so many editions, and when those editions are out, there aren't any more that are available. And this creates a new sort of master before the first edition.
Yes. Hafiz, when you started up making NFT, do you have a similar mindset or similar thoughts of what Jan has just shared?
Well, when I first started, I was just, I think Kevin and Sandra had mentioned this, that when you're a digital artist, you only can settle for prints only when you're selling your work. Like that's all I could ever do. Like there was no, I thought of actually selling a digital item. So when the NFT thing came about and my friends talked about it and the potential it has, as Sandra said, reaching out to different audiences who actually deals with crypto and NFT. So it was like a really good opportunity for me to go beyond my Instagram followers and then go get the word out that I'm doing something else. So that was like an opportunity I could not miss out on, knowing that the Beeple thing came about during the same time. So it was really like a push. Hafiz, do something.
That's great. No, comparing creating and selling NFTs compared to traditional methods, what do you think are the disadvantages or advantages of this change?
You need to be technologically savvy. You need to be engaged in cryptocurrency. You have to be comfortable in the metaverse and transacting with cryptocurrency. That's a challenge.
Maybe to add on to Jean here, it's the fluidity, right? Transactions can go way faster. You just have a lot of command and control over putting up, buying works and putting them up for sale. The marketplaces are in place really to enable transactions to really happen. Imagine if you had a physical piece of work, an amount of work you have to go through just to buy and sell. It's really different ball game. So I guess this goes back to Hafiz's very first point about the value of art. And sure, it's super liquid in a way, you can super move it very fast, but at the same time, I guess it really also depends on how art collectors behave today, like the different generations of art collectors. Because one thing I've learned is that the millennial art collector may be treating art as like trading cards to some extent, right? It's like a rich man's trading card, who knows? But the point is that actually there could be some NFT that are more affordable and very easily tradable. So we could see a distribution on the types of NFT art out there that could democratize the idea of art collection by the everyday person for the first time. I think for the longest time, we always struggled this very huge gap between what is known as art that's freely available and art that's only for the elitists and all that. Maybe for the first time, we can start to see a full spectrum of that and really see that come to life. So it creates that new opportunity as well.
Yeah, I'll jump in this like long ago when I was still doing actual paintings and selling them in galleries. I think what was a bit so draining was that when I sell a painting, the price was sort of doubled, where the gallery sort of take 50% of the commission. And then it's like, why? I mean, I worked my ass off. I made all this stuff, but and that's pretty much how things was going, like for all galleries in Singapore, and what artists was dealing with. And I think with this NFT, you really just cut out the middleman and really just bring the power back to the artist, like free mindset to just make your work and just put it up there. Yeah, without that middleman.
But on that point as well, like the fact that we cut out the middleman, that's also like a weakness when it comes to NFT art, right? Because right now you now have the power and the responsibility to sell your art. You know, you don't have the middleman to help you boost. You don't have art dealers or curators to help you. At the end of the day, you still have to like brand yourself, tell the story to, you know, as art, you have to convince them that your art is worth buying and not that it's sorry?
Yeah, you're the one-stop shop.
Yeah. And you yeah.
But with today's social media and stuff like that, you know, I mean, yeah, everyone's pretty much, and I think that role of the gallery sort of changed a little bit. I think Zilliqa is also doing something with artists, and that, in a sense, sort of changed the role of the gallery, you know, in the past into what is the role of the gallery now for digital artworks. I think that could be the exciting point.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, it really gives power back to the artists, you know, making them independent, you know, in control of the full end-to-end process. But at the same time, because you have all that control, it's now your responsibility to do everything for yourself. So you know, so now when
100%.
yeah. So now everybody's
Twitter.
Huh? Sorry?
Clubhouse, go Twitter, get all the platforms that you know, the collectors and all the NFT collectors are there. So you do your research basically.
Yes, all in your hands. You know, you sort of responsible for everything you do now. So we talk about now, we just cover the advantages and disadvantages. What are some hidden dangers of NFTs that people do not notice? Maybe Kevin or Sandra, you can take this first.
I'm open to share, but maybe let's have Sandra, who works at Zilliqa, to share her view first.
Sorry, I seem to be lagging a little bit. Can anyone hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you. The question was, what are some hidden dangers of NFTs that people do not notice?
Yeah.
Would you like to?
Well, okay. So obviously with an NFT, it's other than the hidden dangers of course, knowing who the artist is and who you're dealing with, it's also very important to know where to store your NFT. You know, you need to have a very functioning idea of how to transfer an NFT to a wallet, how to look after it. But one of the main things that I guess I really want to touch point on is how the NFT is actually stored. So NFT, usually what it is linked to a URL, and that URL is usually hosted somewhere, right? But let's say if this URL is hosted on a website and then they decide to close down, then the link is broken and your NFT is gone. So a good way to make sure that that doesn't happen is there's a decentralized file storage system called the IPFS, right? And once an NFT is linked over through an IPFS, then the link doesn't get broken because it just doesn't die, it doesn't go. It works like the blockchain, you know, it just links everything in a way where the data is stored and it's there, and then you can link it to your wallet. So I guess one thing that I could say to people is to definitely make sure, one, who the artist is and the community you're getting into, two, how you're going to store your NFT, and three, pay attention to how it's linked and stored in the back end as well, because you know that does play a big part. The last thing you'd want to do is to log in to show someone an NFT and then have it say error 404, and you've just paid, I don't know, $20,000 for it, or you know, or whatever money you've put up. So again, that ties down to, as I was saying initially, you know, do the research and just make sure that you do store your NFTs properly, because you cannot run back to the marketplace or the artist and say, hey, it's gone. Yeah, so a lot of the pressure is on the own person.
Yeah, I can build on Sandra's points here. At the end of the day, because this is, like I said, a bit of a Wild West, you really have to do your own research as to what platforms you're buying from and the legitimacy of the artwork. I can tell you that some of the issues in the very early inception and still going on today is the fact that there could be people who are actually ripping off other artists' artwork to put up as NFTs. So that ability for you to do that research, or working with reputable marketplaces that only allow legitimate artists, some of these platforms actually screen and authenticate the artists before letting them put their goods on sale. So these things can help you at least authenticate the reality of the work. What Sandra brought up just now about IPSF, I put it in chat, but basically that's something I learned from my team as well, which is called interplanetary file system. And what that means is that it's a very fascinating. You see, these are NFT also started to kick off new technologies. Every revolution kicks off newer technologies. Very exciting. So IPFSF is interesting because it works even more potent in a way than traditional URLs, where just now you mentioned that some of the ways in which you hyperlink something. This is a more robust file protocol system that helps you locate files or documents that are very essential in this blockchain and NFT ecosystem, so that you can always make sure that it's always there. There were some reports, if you Google around, where people have bought certain NFT products and goods and realized that when they try to look it up, they did hit a 404 or so in the early days, because those days things weren't properly, even till today, it's not really fully regulated. It's more about the best practices and how platforms want to be professional about it, make sure that all these gaps are addressed. So these are the things that you could look out for and ask questions before you actually commit to buying your first NFT item. Yeah, so those are the small things to look out for first.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for explaining to us what is IPFS. I think that really helped a lot of the newly initiated here. Now, Hafiz, so were these kind of things do you look out for, or do you just like learn this today? So
Yeah, I learning on the go actually. I mean, like at that point of the problem is that when I first started out in March, the education part of it is so fragmented. Like I didn't know where to go and find out, what to do, like start up, get the crypto wallet and all that stuff. That flow wasn't obvious for me as an artist who doesn't know anything about blockchain, don't know anything. And then how to start, I still don't know. So join an NFT community, artist community. They will help you out a lot. Do your research on which platform best suits the type of NFT you want to do, whether it's OpenSea with super like a lazy minting, or you want to be more curated version. Do those research. So Sandra?
So I just want to jump in and say, I think a good place to start, and I'm not just saying that because I'm from Zilliqa, but we do have a creator fund, that is being spoken about more in our upcoming event, which is ZIL4, celebrating 4 years of Zilliqa being around. So I won't go into much detail, but we do have a creator fund being put together where we are investing into individuals and helping them get used to the space and onboard into the whole NFT world. I think, and this is something that's very important for me to touch point on, is that we're so immersed into the space that for us, it could be easy to understand it, but you have a whole other kind of section and market who have no idea what NFTs are, what an IPF is, or even what a digital artist is these days. So it's very important to onboard and educate as we go ahead. And for us, the best way to do that is we put together a creator fund where we help individuals, guide them into their journey through NFTs, and just, give the creator the go ahead to grow and explore their art. So I'm looking at you, Hafiz. I'm looking at you.
Where were you when I started out?
We're here now. I'm here now.
Yeah, I know.
This is perhaps something Jan will be also be interested to explore with you.
Yes, sounds interesting. We'll follow up later.
Definitely.
Awesome. So, Sanjan, you just now mentioned that NFT really contributes to the overall art scene in many ways. Now, how do you think, looking into the future, if you're the crystal ball, how do you think they will change the art and creative industries for the years to come?
Number one, there's a lot of question like what are the applications for NFT as well? I think in the past we have witnessed a sort of sample of this, like with in-app purchases, especially if you play some games with for decorative items and stuff like that. But then I do know there's this company called Red Fox Games, and they are actually utilizing the whole NFT into the game itself. And I guess in future on, there's going to be a lot more opportunity for artists to create stuff, especially younger artists who are a lot more tech savvy. I know students who are really hyping up getting to the NFT, trying to learn what is NFT and trying to produce something for it. Companies who are actively looking out, like Zilliqa is looking out for artists, Red Fox Games is looking out for artists as well. I think on the more distant future, or maybe not so distant, what would artists do with NFT then? Like what other artworks? There may be works that is that could be just images, but what about contemporary art? How can artists express the age that we live in now with NFT? I think that will be extremely, extremely interesting. As like perhaps this whole COVID situation that had happened in the last 1.5 years, it sort of pushed forward new media art, and artists are new artists are all finding digital ways to express the times that we live in. And I guess NFT will be a very nice space where artists could sort of mark the works that has been made at this point, just like Jackson Pollock has done it in the 50s, just like Da Vinci has done Mona Lisa back in God knows when. Yeah.
But with that, I feel that there has to be like a exhibition space to showcase these kind of things, and not just like an open like a marketplace thing, because like when people buy an NFT, people question, okay, what do I do with this again? Like, I know it's a digital certificate, but I support this artist, I buy the NFT, that what do I do now? So like, there's this Decentraland or CryptoVox, all space. No, cannot.
I wish I could come in and just say everything I want to say, but I can't, because then I'll be giving so many ins into what's up and coming. But kind of, I do want you to put your mind at ease. The Zillaverse, put your mind at ease. There's so much that's up and coming, and it's a very interesting space to be in. So one word of advice would be continue pushing and growing your art, because sooner than later you will have a very nice place to showcase your art in the Zillaverse. There's so much coming and happening, but
I think also just like to think about it, like Hafiz is right. Like, what are the other platforms that we can actually see these digital artworks on? I think back to my point where I said that there has to be new application to be made with NFT. What are the possibilities with it? A lot of what I do has to do with like augmented reality in this recent years. So I'm just gonna show something on my screen. Like, for example, if a 3D model like this, sorry, can't really see properly. If a 3D model like this, sorry, yeah, that's me. Here.
So basically, you're scanning a card on your phone that shows a 3D model that pops up.
I guess one of the possible application is, what if there's an app that could just load up an NFT and watch it directly on augmented reality? I think there could be something like this. I don't really know about it, but I guess like I said, I think augmented reality is one of them. And just to reply to one of the question was, how can NFT be applied onto real estate? IKEA has already done this with their app, where you can just do placements of furnitures within a space itself. And why can't we view the artworks that we own on augmented reality in actual digital space? Yeah. So it's sort of like, we don't have to print it out, we don't have to 3D make it, already an application can be there.
How about museums, Kevin? How would NFTs change the experience at museums?
That's something that we're also tackling, because as a new medium, right, we really put some thought into it. That's not to say that we can't. I think if at the end of the day, each museum has a certain specialization. At National Gallery Singapore, we focus on modern art of South Asia, Singapore and South Asia. And if there's an NFT that happens to respond in that same narrative, there's a chance that we could, definitely try and display something like that, but in relation to the larger narrative that the museum's all about. Then, of course, there are contemporary museums like Singapore Art Museum, or even Jean's own gallery, where these are more contemporary and they could focus on these artworks, these type of artworks more readily. But I can tell you that for a museum to exhibit these things, in general, it would be a bit more challenging. It would take us some time to wrap our heads around it, to figure out, is this the right moment? And I think more importantly, it's more about that story that, or the context in which those artworks are about. What do those artworks mean, and do they really respond to what's going on? Now, having said that, what can we functionally, pragmatically do? Museums, just to educate everybody here, museums are in a business as an authority to try and educate people about art history and, you know, increase art appreciation in your country, right? So we also have to be careful with that kind of responsibility and power. So currently, one of the things that we're attempting to do is that with the partnership team, they are exploring potentially doing NFT art fundraisers. You know, these are areas in which we can dabble with, and we're exploring. It could give patrons and art collectors and even new people who are new to the museum new entryways to sort of get into the feel of collecting and buying art also. So that's some extent we're exploring. I can also share with you that we did something quite novel just before the whole NFT craze came about. In our Gallery Explorer app and on the website, the Gallery's website, the partnership team actually did this thing called Adopt Now. And it was a way of crowdsourcing for funding to support the art acquisition and collections that we have. So the team would pick out, like, for example, 3 key artworks that people could love, and for as low as $50, they could crowdfund it. It's almost like Kickstarter, right? And then there's a target and all that. So all those are live. And what we did before the NFT craze, as sort of like a proxy to it, was we issued them a blockchain token so that it recognizes in a ledger that, you know, in some sense, you've made that contribution, we recognize that, and you're certified for that. Now it's completely different from this NFT thing. And if we had to build it later when the NFT craze around, we could have changed that. But now we're attempting to ride that NFT wave later on as well. So you can see we're constantly trying. And this NFT thing, I think there are precursors that we've seen in the larger blockchain universe that people have tried as well before. It's just that now with NFT, it's helping to create some sort of focus around creating digital objects that kind of mimic a physicality to it, you know, that supply and demand aspect of it. So that's how we're working with it as well.
That's really, really exciting. It seems like you guys like sort of like democratizing art, you know, not just you get to enjoy art, you also get to be a part of it, own a piece of it. And then I think that's really interesting for, you know, collectors, artists, and people who just simply have to enjoy art.
Agreed, Alex. I think one thing that we're trying to get around is this idea that, you know, you come to a museum and the museum is kind of supposed to be like your second living room. Your taxpayers' dollars are at work and you kind of co-own the artwork. It's kind of there for you. But we also understand that it does feel very passive. You're there just viewing. And it's a very different sensation if you have this sense, if you actually kind of co-own it or actually own an NFT of it. There's something really different there. And we want to promote that because we totally understand and agree that there has to be that participatory aspect, this aspect where you can imagine or dictate or have some autonomy over or decision over what happens to this piece, right? And we're trying to figure out how to, like you say, democratize the artwork and make it accessible.
That's really nice. You know, owning a small piece of art, you know, gives you a small sense of pride, I guess. Makes them feel more engaged. Like, hey, you know, I support these artists. You know, this is like a small way for me to support maybe Yan or Hafiz or Zhenzhen when they create a new art piece. You know, maybe I cannot buy the whole art piece, but I can give a small portion as a token, maybe of my appreciation to the creativity that they have created.
And you can participate with friends and form a group. And it can be a social experience where you all own a piece of this work. So it makes it more social.
Yes.
As well as lowering the barrier to entry.
Definitely. You know, we talk about, you know, just now when we talk about getting to NFTs, it seems very young, still very nascent. You know, there's still a lot of hoops to jump through, especially understanding, you know, perhaps what Hafiz said, creating a crypto wallet, understanding all the pitfalls. You know, what do you guys think would be needed for NFT to be really adopted by the mainstream society? Perhaps Sandra, would you like to give it a shot first?
I would say normalizing of the
sure. Can you go survey?
Economy. Sorry, Sandra, I don't mean to step on your toes there.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
A lot needs to shake out, I think, in the crypto economy. Go ahead, Sandra. What do you think?
Sorry, what was the initial question, Alex? If you don't mind just repeating that.
The question was NFTs themselves. like what Hafiz and the rest of the speakers have said, there's a lot of hoops to jump through, a lot of things that you have to understand because it's also cryptocurrency blockchain based. So what do you think is needed for NFT to really go mainstream and be adopted by the society?
Well, definitely, and I think I kind of touched base on that prior. It's just more awareness and education on how to onboard the broader market. So we are immersed in it, so we know how it happens. But if you were to talk to a normal collector, one, they might not see the value of an NFT yet because they aren't aware of what it actually is. Two, people need to see the full benefit of how easy it is to actually, once you get involved into I'm going to refer to it as the crypto world, right? Once you do get involved, it actually makes your life much easier when it comes to being able to, transfer, purchase, and, participate in what's going on within the marketplace and with the artists. So I think the best way for me to continue with this is to say that it really just comes down to awareness and investing a lot into easy onboarding and on-ramping from conversions of fiat to crypto, because I think that's where mainly a lot of people get confused, which is, how I have physical money, how can I put that and invest into an NFT? So yeah, that would definitely be my my input, and also giving them a marketplace where they can go to that involves all of the artists and, easy access.
Definitely. It seems like, once they get over that initial hump, it's like this whole scene is like a black hole. Once you go close to it and you touch it and you do things for the first time, you sort of get familiar and you sort of get sucked into the whole system as a whole. So was that something you experienced?
So the fact that a lot of major,
Sorry, you're saying?
A lot of major art houses are getting behind NFTs too. So you have Christie's. I said a lot of major art houses are getting behind NFTs too. So you have Christie's, you have Thorsby's, and now, you have a museum. I can't remember from the top of my head. Maybe Kevin, you can help out. They're thinking of fractionalizing ownership of. I think it was the Mona Lisa, if I'm correct. So I can't 100% remember, but you do have all these big institutions now saying, hey, we recognize that this exists and it's happening, so get on board. That also helps with the easy onboarding too.
Awesome. Perhaps one last question from each speaker, one last answer from each speaker before we go into Q&A. Just go one round. What would you say to an NFT skeptic, for anybody who's listening right now? Perhaps Hafiz, you wanna give it a shot first?
Oh, I got nothing to say. That's your opinion, right? Seriously. But I mean, well, I'll say that it's gonna be here whether you like it or not. So but you just adopt it or you just get left behind. Seriously, it's their choice, really. It's gonna come sooner or later.
I personally don't think there's skeptics, right? I mean, so far there are more people who are curious instead of like going against it. I think there are more younger artists and generally just to want to understand what is NFT and how can they get into it, or is it possible that their work gets get into this whole wave as well. I think the recent sale of the $69 million work, I think sort of is a very good convincing point that a lot of artists wants to get on board as well. Yeah.
But then it's easy though.
Huh?
But then but then they think it's easy to sell the work. That's the problem.
Oh, that's the two value, the value of the artist versus the value of the work itself. It's I mean value of the artwork itself versus value of the it's a long it's been in throughout history. It's the same problem. If it's a good work doesn't mean it will sell. Yeah.
How about Jan? What do you think? What would you say to an NFT skeptic?
I would say just keep listening and learning, asking questions, and being skeptical until your questions are answered and you're ready to get in, or just keep asking questions.
Awesome.
Learn about it.
Maybe from my side, if you look at beyond just NFTs and beyond the art world, a lot of investable areas, whether it's property or whatever, at first, there's a bit of a gold rush, right? that happens the minute some of these marketplaces open. And over time, naturally, to balance out and moderate how the economy is supposed to work, instead of being so lopsided, rules start to be introduced. So I think the bottom line here is you can come in later where it's safer, but don't expect as much return because you're taking less risk as well. So it's just like the fact of life for everything else that's possibly investable.
That makes a lot of sense. So I think ride the wave early if you guys are interested, in a sense. Sandra, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think I look at it as just a new layer of engagement when it comes to, you know, a new form of art or a new type of engagement and creator kind of broadening of how far they can go with within their field and their art. So to me, a human nature in general, when something is new, we're not used to it. So it kind of takes a while for us to, you know, adapt to what's actually happening. And, you know, so there's no one early, there's no one late. It's just a matter of how far in do you want to dive, you know, either the deep end or the shallow end, and just go right in and start small, you know, research a bit about NFTs, how to store them, set up a wallet, get involved in crypto if you haven't already. And then slowly you'll start getting more immersed into the future of NFTs. And as it broadens out and expands into industries, you can't escape it at the end of the day. So
Yeah, so it
the
seems
metaverse is real and it's here to stay. And sooner or later, our physical world and our digital world will be one. Yeah.
That's awesome. So just start somewhere so that you don't miss out all the fun. All right. Let us move
100%.
Great. Let us move to the Q&A section. I think we have really quite a number of questions that you guys have asked. Let's just start with the most top voted question. That's anonymous attendee asks, now say a Mona Lisa becomes an NFT, does the owner burn the physical painting? That's like heresy. Or does the owner keep both? If the owner keeps both, then the NFT basically just becomes like a certification. So do you think it makes sense for that to happen?
So I like that.
When a Mona Lisa, that's painful to hear.
Yeah, they have
So
to burn the Mona Lisa. That's it. We all go to a party and we just have to burn it, and then it doesn't exist.
It'll be a rave,
No, I think it's a
right?
very strong question. It's definitely a very important question that I think a lot of people do bring up. So it would. Oh, sorry, Kevin. I don't know. You wanted to come in from your
No, please carry on first.
kind of. No, I just wanted to say it would really depend on how whoever owns the Mona Lisa is putting it up for I'd say auction or for sale. So either they're attaching a certificate of authenticity, kind of a digital certificate of ownership of the Mona Lisa as an NFT, or whether they're fractionalizing the sale of it. It really just comes down to how they are NFTing the Mona Lisa, but there definitely won't be any burning of any artwork happening. Yeah, so Kevin, I guess from your perspective, it really ties down to what's the added value of having the NFT, right? Whether it's a physical art piece. So what would be attached to it as an NFT is what plays the bigger part.
Yeah, so just to add, I think again there is no set rule as to what should be done in relation to that purchase of the NFT. So there's nothing to be said about what happens to original artwork and all that. So part of that purchasing experience would have to include then the terms and agreement as to what happens to all the other pieces. You know, it could be that in most cases the physical artwork still exists and could be displayed in a museum or gallery, right? So in most cases that would be the case. And if it were a private collector that puts out his work or artist that puts out a work for NFT, he or she could set the rule that, you know, he could destroy the artwork if he wish. It's not impossible. In fact, there was a recent one where Jean-Michel Basquiat, he offered to put up an NFT artwork of his artwork and allow the winner to destroy his original artwork so that that NFT artwork becomes the original piece. Now, things like this start to extend beyond the art itself. That whole act of the auction and the behavior of destroying turns the entire experience into what we call performance art as well. So just like how Banksy had his work shredded at the Christie's auction live in front of everybody, this whole thing is, sometimes people might think that it's trying to make a mockery of the system, but in other cases, these are also, in a sense, very performative. And this is where that whole cross-disciplinary thing might get a bit cheem for the rest of us, but it's trying to tell you that visual art is starting to extend to performance art. And now that code comes in that has a set of rules that can govern how this art should be managed, continues to automatically and robotically manage how the art should continue to perform. And like I said, we've nearly scratched the surface, because all these terms and agreement as to what to do with the original really depends on the seller. But beyond that, it's also this idea that there can be artists that are super creative, understand the code well enough to even program the artwork to behave in certain ways under certain conditions. So to answer the anonymous attendee's question about whether you have to burn it, no, you don't have to, but you could if you want to. And you can state whether you want to keep both NFT and the art and the physical artwork. And actually, at the end of the day, right, when you buy an artwork, an NFT, indeed, you are actually owning the title or the deed to the artwork. That's what you're essentially buying. You're actually not buying the image or anything. You're buying the rights. So there was other questions about, what if I duplicate 100 copies of artwork? You can, but that's where copyright steps in. It's a different ballgame altogether when you talk about the actual visual piece, as opposed to the title or deed that proves that you own that piece. So that's what you're really buying into, that ownership idea versus the image itself. So these are separate constructs, components that we talk about. And I hope that clarifies a little bit. It's kind of going to the details of what you actually own and all the terms and agreement that you make with that owner, that he would actually stipulate all these terms and agreement. And people are getting very creative about this. Maybe just to add one last point, there was an artist, I forgot the name, I'm so sorry, who used the NFT code and coded it with GPS locations and time codes, such that if you were to take this NFT to different parts of the world by GPS at different times, the work would morph and change. So again, these are where NFT and art, and as an NFT as a medium, is colliding with art to create new possibilities of visual art that's performing in a way. So it's also super exciting. We're entering new realms altogether. It's like quantum physics for art in a way, where we're entering new spaces for what's possible. So I've answered this in a super elaborate way, but I hope that kind of answers the gist of the question.
Really, really like the way you answer. It's very detailed, got me thinking, what does it mean? Why are people doing this? Spend so much time, like Shenzhen was saying, just now, you spend so much time putting in effort, ideating, painting the hours, and then you just destroy it at the end. So that's something I think.
It's quite interesting also. The NFT could be a timestamp of what the painting is. I mean, the original Mona Lisa used to be bigger until artists used to come in and they keep cutting all the size, and it becomes smaller and smaller each time it gets stolen. And I think with now NFT, is sort of the digital version of it, you sort of put a timestamp as to like what the work originally looked like. And yeah, no matter how much the work will change, whether they get destroyed or not, at least you still have a sense of the originality of the piece. Like I think what Jen said about the master copy, in a way.
Jan, would this be something that you would consider?
Yeah, absolutely. Master copies. The NFT is essentially the original before the original, the idea. So yeah, it creates a whole new edition, a master edition.
Great. The next question, I think, is a fun question. Which of you have bought NFTs, and when do you buy your first, and what was your favorite purchase?
I guess some of us sold. Anybody bought? I wanted to buy, but I only merely started my crypto wallet, so I haven't really got into it yet. So we're tracking a few marketplaces, but I don't know if I'm too late because the prices, really fluctuate.
You can buy them very affordably, I think. Down to $100.
I've definitely invested in.
Sorry, Sandra, you're lagging there.
That's the lag. That's the lag. Sandra, you're in Beirut, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry for this horrible internet. As I was saying, I've definitely invested in a couple of NFTs that I'm really happy with. I think the artist does a great job with how they portray the art. And when was the first time I bought one? I guess it would be, actually, that's a very good question. Kind of, I can't remember when it was, but I think it was back when I first started with this entire kind of world, and I was like, okay, how's this going to come about? What is it? I'm more on the minting side, so I've more kind of experimented putting artwork up for sale and that, but definitely do own a couple of NFTs. The entire process to me is very interesting too. I think anyone that's new to the world will understand how exciting it is to just click buy or see an auction and then have it transferred to your wallet. So that whole idea is very exciting, I find.
Great. Next question is, how does NFT benefit investors if the free rider problem exists? Some people can just take a screenshot of the digital art or save the animation. How does it really benefit investors?
Again, I would bring up the example of owning a master recording of a published song. So the same dynamics apply. Mm-hmm. You own the rights. If you have to enforce them, you have to enforce them. YouTube has gotten pretty sophisticated in terms of policing publishing rights for music, so it's the same dynamic essentially.
That makes sense. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sure. Besides, again, as I mentioned, copyrights, there's nothing to stop you. Let's step outside the realm of NFT. Almost anything else could be duplicated as digital, right? And there are other policies or systems that kind of regulate that. But whoever's purchasing NFTs have to know very distinctly in their heads that, again, it's the sense of ownership, but it doesn't automatically control every copy of the visual, the piece, right? Whether it's audio, video, or whatnot that's been duplicated. And that in itself would be governed under the idea of copyright, which goes into legal frameworks and all that. But the code itself is able to stipulate that you are indeed the true owner of this piece to some regard. So that's as far as it can go. But I can tell you that there is some work being done. And if you go to Gartner's website, Gartner actually tracks all the trends, technology trends that's watching. They have a particular Gartner curve that looks at blockchain technologies. And in there, you see multiple pieces of technologies that talk about NFTs and all that. One of the bits that is developing in our world right now is the idea of digital provenance, which attempts to solve this problem, which is exactly the point about how do we track duplicates and how do we manage that, right? To some extent, this technology does exist, but in very industrialized way. For example, those of you familiar with uploading to YouTube and all that, they have AI systems to track copyright strikes, like when someone uses commercial music in their videos and all that. So such technology, even like turn it in when you're working in school, you can check your document whether you plagiarize text. So this technology exists, but the thing now that people are trying to figure out is how do we apply it on a more wide scale level, including visual art, so that you can track on the internet and wherever if there are duplicates that exist and if you can mark them down or something like that. So this technology is sort of coming to fold. It will probably take 5 years or so. Blockchain is going to enable, to some extent, some ability for us to validate because it's good as a ledger, but it still needs another way to optically or recognize the pieces out there. And so there are means and ways to solve this. And thanks to AI and all those technologies out there, this is where the synergy of some of these technologies will help us to attempt to technologically solve some of these problems. But for the current day, we may have to rely on legal frameworks to get around these infringements. Yeah. Hope that helps.
Great. Yeah, that really makes sense. When all these technology as they rise, I believe parallel technologies will build onto this and really help each other in the sense of building the whole ecosystem together. I think one last question. I think we are over time by 8 minutes. Just one last question for my anonymous attendee again. For NFTs, is it important for artists to build on a single private platform controlled by a corporation/entity, or build on a decentralized network? Sandra, perhaps this is something you would kick off with.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess what the person who asked the question wants to know is what's the best route to kind of take with their NFT. It really just comes down to what they want to do with the NFT. So how much they want to, what's the added value that they want to have to it, and to the art that they're putting out there. I mean, if they're talking about decentralized platforms, I mean kind of like OpenSea, Mintable, Rarible, Super Rare, and all of these. So this is where a majority of the artists are and where they're putting their work. That does give them a benefit that already there are a couple of collectors who are looking over these kind of sites and following through with what the artists are doing. And it does add an added value that they do take care of the minting process for them, in a sense where they upload and then they do the hard work for them. So there really is no right way to answer this. It just really comes down to what is suitable for your preference. Yeah, it's just a preference kind of choice. I can't really pinpoint them in a direction, because it's more what they want to do.
Great. Well, I think that's we come to the end of the event. Thank you very much for attending, and thank you very much once again to all our speakers who have taken the time to really plan this, organize this, and really appear today to give your expert insights into the NFT space. Now, thank you very much. So for those who want to continue to connect with our speakers, I'll be just looping a couple of slides where you can see how to connect with them through their website or through LinkedIn. And hopefully you guys continue the conversations with them. Thank you very much and have a great evening, everyone.